he sharpens his fangs and sinks those teeth into their leg. And what is it that Grover can do to you? He is the most powerful person in America today. I'm going to give him that full credit. I think he should run for president. He has those powers. 95% of the Republicans are in thrall to this gentleman.
That was former Republican Senator Alan Simpson, co-chair of President Obama's Fiscal Commission, on MSNBC Today, referring to anti-tax lobbyist Grover Norquist and his role in the Supercommittee's failure to reach an agreement on deficit reduction. Norquist, like me, but for different reasons, is just fine with the Supercommittee's failure. Grover tweeted, "Supercommittee could not agree how to cut $1.2 trillion, so now we sequester," French for cut, $1.2 trillion. This is failing how? But as long as Congress remains unable to negotiate a deficit reduction package, Grover's worst nightmare looms on January 1st, 2013, when the Bush tax cuts are scheduled to expire, thereby delivering, without even a congressional vote, the biggest tax increase in history. The Obama administration indicates that the president will veto an extension of Bush tax cuts for the top income tax brackets. A senior White House official told the Associated Press, "He won't sign a full extension. We're going to be in the position at the end of next year where the president is saying, 'I'm not going to sign a full extension, but send me the middle class tax cuts.'" Friend of the show Ezra Klein, catching this, asked Grover Norquist about his worst nightmare on Now with Alex Wagner today.
The pledge has gotten Republicans into a position where they have now said no to multiple different compromises that would have extended or made permanent the bulk of the Bush tax cuts. So if they get to December of 2012 and they're saying, which this is an unpopular position, that they would rather let all of them expire than let those for the upper income taxpayers expire, the outcome of that could be a tax increase of $3.8 trillion, not a trillion, not 1.2, not 800 billion. And it would be, in a sense, because of the pledge, because in being so penny wise on taxes, they became pound foolish. Do you look at that with any sort of threat or concern?
Well, two thoughts on that. One, that's exactly the situation we were in 1 year ago, and a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate and a Democratic President voted to extend all of the 2001-2003 tax cuts for a 2-year period. So we have been through that before. The next time we answer this question, in addition to a Republican House of Representatives, we'll probably have a Republican Senate, and there's a good chance we'll have a Republican president.
Ezra Klein, Washington Post columnist and MSNBC analyst, joins me now. Ezra, so the Grover strategy is to simply cross his fingers, and he believes that we are in the same political dynamic that we were the last time, which was the president agreed to an increase to hold the top tax bracket down because it allowed him to hold down all the rest of the brackets. So now the question becomes, is the White House willing to go through with what is in effect its threat, which is to say they will end up allowing all of the tax rates to go up just in order to get the top tax rate to go up?
Right. And you'll notice that Grover Norquist did not say, "No, I am not concerned. No, it is not a problem." He simply said, when this happened 2 years ago, or a year ago, actually, in a different political context, we came out okay. But the reason was the White House was very interested back then in stimulus, and they felt they could get quite a lot of it by bargaining out the Bush tax cuts. They did, in fact, get quite a lot of it, and they extended them for 2 years. Now Barack Obama will either have won re-election or have lost it, and there will be less of a need for stimulus. We are not in the same position we were at the very end of 2010. It isn't to say we don't need any of it, but it is to say the situation has eased somewhat. And there is good reason, I think, to believe that the White House is now serious when they say we will veto any attempt to extend all the Bush tax cuts rather than to decouple the tax cuts for the rich from those for everyone else.
So, Ezra, just to be clear, you think people in the White House are now seriously imagining a scenario in which, through the president's veto, he ends up then being politically responsible, in effect, for having all tax brackets increase?
I think to say they seriously imagine it and say they will stick to it are two different things. But I do think that you have to look at it from this perspective, too. Let's say you were Barack Obama, and let's say you said to yourself, there is no way that America, with the baby boomers retiring, with healthcare costs being what they are, with the need to have a strong sort of domestic research and education system, that we can have the type of revenue base that we're talking about in this discussion. That, to be fair, is true. They are talking about, both the Democrats and the Republicans, tax levels that are much, much too low for what America will need in the coming decades. You wouldn't want to say, well, I want to increase taxes by $3.8 trillion. What you would want to do is get into a position where Republican obstinance simply did it for you. So whether or not President Obama actually wants to let them expire or whether he is simply playing chicken with Republicans is a little bit hard to tell right now, because if he did want them all to expire, this would be exactly what any negotiator or what any political professional would tell him to do, which is put Republicans in a position where they let them expire in order to protect the rich.
Yeah, that would be actually the perfect way to do it, and I'm all for him doing this. I am wondering, though, at some point, does the administration need to start at least some kind of sidewise education campaign that lets America know the rates we're talking about here were the Bill Clinton rates of the 1990s when everybody did very well. I mean, don't let the country get too terrified at the idea of all of these rates actually going up.
You know, the problem is the Obama administration, going all the way back to the 08 campaign, have been fairly tax alarmists. They have not been courageous on this issue. Remember, they've had that pledge to never raise taxes on anyone under $250,000. To some degree, they've broken that already. The health care bill had some tax increases that will affect people making under $250,000. But they have really boxed themselves into a corner. And I agree with you. They are completely incoherent on this. Barack Obama, President Obama, will go out and talk about the great Clinton economy, and he will attribute at least some of that, some of the deficit reduction that led to the low interest rates that led to part of the boom, to the Clinton tax rates. And then he will say, I would like to extend 80% of the Bush tax cuts. It doesn't actually add up all that well. But it speaks to their political strategy, which has been to say that the great weakness for Democrats is taxes. The question is going to be, once they've won re-election or lost it, whether or not they're willing to simply say that political strategy is over. Now it's time to get the right fiscal situation in place.
Yeah, it would come at a time where the president would be in a unique political circumstance that we've never seen him in before. So we'll see what the calculus is then. Ezra Klein, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you.